Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I am Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and it is time for more off-season content. And today's episode of off-season content is picking the Alabama football 2025 schedule game by game. We're going to predict the wins and losses here in 2025. And Kalen DeBoer's second year as the Alabama head coach. Helping me to do that, as usual, our good friend, producer, Matt Scalici. Matt, welcome. How are you at predicting the future?
Terrible, Ben. But I at least try to admit that when I got it wrong, and I think that's part of the fun of college football is we all, even the people who've been watching it and covering it for years, we all like to think that we see the patterns and we know what to expect. And you never do with college football. It's one of the most unpredictable, chaotic sports, and I think it's fun to set your expectations, if only to watch them be defied every year.
Who do we think is going to go number one this year? Preseason AP number one, probably Ohio State. You think defending
Uh,
champs or
I mean,
Georgia? Like, who do you think?
I think Ohio State's a pretty good, a pretty good pick for that. I think there seems to be a lot of hype, surprisingly to me, around Clemson going into this
Hmm.
season. I'm sure that Georgia will be hyped to some degree, although there's a lot of uncertainty for them at quarterback. I wonder if Texas gets some hype because of Arch Manning and the hype machine around him. But I don't know. I mean, it does feel a little bit more wide open coming into this season than it did a year ago, I think.
Yeah, it's weird with Clemson because they haven't really been Clemson the way that we knew them during the mid 2000s, 2010s, I should say, since like 2019 when LSU just dispatched them in that on their way to just like a perfect, amazing season, what many consider the best in college football history. And Clemson has just kind of seemingly been on the mend ever since then. Dabo hasn't really gotten it together. I mean, he won a couple of national championships. Obviously, he's done great things, but you would think that Clemson would just be a dynamo, and they've struggled.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a big part of why the ACC has taken such a hit reputation wise. I mean, obviously last year they did get two teams into the playoffs at Alabama's expense, but it didn't feel like as strong of a group, and I think Florida State being down has a lot to do with that. So I mean, I think there's just fewer opportunities for Clemson to make a big impression because they're not playing a lot of elite teams during the season in the way that, so many SEC and Big Ten schools last year. It felt like there were these huge matchups every single weekend. And, I think that's a big part of kind of creating hype around your program.
Well, the show's called Beat Everyone, not Beat Boston College. So enough on Clemson right now. Let's get into this. Our friend and AL.com Alabama reporter Nick Kelly, he's got a couple of interesting articles taking people game by game this year. He ranked Alabama's football season from easiest to hardest. He also went through what he considers the biggest trap games of the 2025 season. And Nick is always really solid with his analysis. And we'll see how he does. But go read that and then also listen to this, Matt, because let's just go dive into Alabama's schedule. It's a tough one this year. Kalen DeBoer's second season is not going to get any easier for him. And, a lot of people feel like, I wouldn't call this a make or break year for Kalen DeBoer by any stretch, but it's obviously going to be a statement year one way or the other. We've talked about the momentum he has coming into this, not losing anybody during the last transfer portal window. So more on the building chemistry and the wave of momentum that Alabama has, the buy-in that players have started to show, and we'll see what the product looks like on the field. In the meantime, let's just talk about it. We know nothing, but we're going to pretend like we know everything going into the season as we go game by game. So, Matt, let's start with Florida State in Tallahassee, August 30th, 2:30 p.m. What do you think?
Well, look, this is obviously going to be a hugely important game, I think, in recent Alabama football history. And it always is when you're debuting a new starting quarterback. That's always a huge deal. And they're doing it on the road. They're doing it against a power program with a huge fan base that I think desperately needs something good to happen for them. But that said, Ben, I mean, I think Alabama is returning a lot of talent, despite the fact that quarterback isn't one of them. And Florida State's also rolling out a new quarterback. They got a transfer, guy named Thomas Castellanos from Boston College. Speak of the devil, as you so respectfully referred to them earlier. But I think that Florida State, to me, had a lot more issues than just quarterback a year ago. It's hard to believe they could possibly be worse than they were last year. So I expect them to be better, and they're gonna be rocking in their home stadium against Alabama, and that's gonna be a nerve wracking environment for whoever Alabama's starting quarterback happens to be going into that game. That said, I still think overall roster quality is pretty far superior for Alabama. I think they get it done.
The biggest narrative, or what should be going into this game, is that Gus Malzahn is the offensive
Yep.
coordinator for Florida State. So you've got this little mini Iron Bowl within this game, and Gus obviously is having to reprove himself as maybe a potential head coaching candidate for a good school in this role. And I'm sure if and when he does well, then he'll get another opportunity. This game would be a big opportunity for him to make a statement against an Alabama team that people think could be back in playoff contention. And so Florida State, obviously, they're going to be better than they were in 2024. Remember, after going undefeated in the regular season in 2023 and just missing the playoff because they lost their starting quarterback, Jordan Travis, they go 2-10 in 2024. One of the biggest drop-offs in recent memory. It was hard to watch. It was a shocking turn of events, to say the least. And you mentioned the new starting quarterback from Boston College. They added a few Tennessee transfers, a lot of talent from the SEC coming onto their roster again. And they even added a few players from Alabama the year before. So Florida State has a roster, but can they turn 2-10 into a team that can beat Alabama and maybe contend in the ACC and contend for the playoff? I don't see it, Matt. I think Alabama wins this game.
Yep. I think we both feel pretty good about this one, although it's again, we'll learn a lot about this team from game one, I think.
Game 2, Louisiana Monroe at home, September 6th, 6:45 p.m. This is a non-Power 4 team on the schedule for Alabama, one of two, I believe, this season. Matt, I always consider Louisiana Monroe a revenge game for
Forever.
Alabama. Going back to 2000, Alabama needs to pound ULM into the ground anytime they play them in Bryant-Denny Stadium after what happened now a couple of decades ago. What do you think here? Do you think big blowout or just like run of the mill? Kind of. Do you consider this a cupcake game for Alabama? I think they win it, obviously, but what about
I
Louisiana Monroe?
I mean, I don't know that I would call it a cupcake in the way that's, in recent years Alabama playing sort of a FCS opponent once a year is truly the cupcake, I think. But this was not a great group of 5 team a year ago. They went 5-7 last season. They're in the Sun Belt, but didn't weren't particularly a standout in the Sun Belt. I think that Louisiana Monroe has a lot of building left to do. And it was their first season with a new head coach last year. It was actually a guy named Brian Vincent, who was a lot of people think should have gotten the UAB job, but and he's a respectable coach and seems to know what he's doing, but I think he's got a big rebuild job ahead of him. And I've already given more breath to Louisiana Monroe than they probably deserve.
All right, after 2 games, Alabama's 2-0, according to us, Matt. Game 3, Wisconsin at home, September 13th at 11 a.m., my favorite kickoff time, Matt. So at Wisconsin, they're going to have a much different looking offense in 2025. They're going to have a different starting quarterback. They signed Billy Edwards Jr. from the transfer portal after he previously played for Wake Forest and Maryland. This is Luke Fickell back as head coach. Very talented head coach. We know that at this point. I remember seeing that John Gruden visited the team during the offseason, and he gave his nightmare speech. You want to be a nightmare, that whole thing. And he said, you want to be a nightmare for Alabama. So obviously the messaging here is we want revenge on Alabama. We want to beat that team. It's circled on everybody's calendar. Obviously, Wisconsin coming to Bryant-Denny Stadium probably favors Alabama that they're playing at 11 a.m. after a pretty significant travel for Wisconsin coming from up north. So we'll see how that factors in. But Matt, Alabama handled Wisconsin 42-10 on the road last year in Kalen DeBoer's first season, made quick work of them. Obviously, it'll be a different team, but what do you think? I see this as another win for Alabama.
I do too. I think there's you could argue that maybe Alabama's score against Wisconsin last year was a little deceptive because the starting quarterback for Wisconsin went out so early in the game, and Wisconsin was sort of hanging in there until that happened, and then the dam broke. I think it probably would have ended up pretty similar anyway, and I think Wisconsin is going to get absolutely cooked in that noontime, early afternoon Tuscaloosa sun. I don't think they're ready for it.
It's going to be hot, man. Like you've been there, those early, or I'm sorry, mid to
Brutal.
late September games in Bryant Denny Stadium. 11 o'clock is cruel,
There's
and
not
it's going
one
to be
second
packed.
of that game that you are not being burned alive in the sun.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and especially for Wisconsin. I'm with you. Maybe they'll shock the world. Who knows? They'll be well coached. We know that. And yeah, it'll be fun though. Fun SEC Big Ten matchup. You love to see it. This is the kind of game you want to see more of during the regular season. And honestly, you might see less of it moving forward, which is a shame. So they're 3-0 going into week 4, or their fourth game, I should say, September 27th. They go to Athens. They play Georgia. 6:30 p.m. kick. Huge game, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, like we talked about a little bit, this is a game that I think there's big question marks heading into the season for both teams, because they're sort of reshuffling things offensively. They're going to have a little bit of a new identity this year. I like what Alabama's bringing back defensively, and I think that's going to give them a great shot in this game. You know, both teams coming off of a bye. I gotta think Georgia is sick to their stomach about the way they lost to Alabama a year ago on the road. I'm gonna say Georgia wins this game, but I don't think this is a case of Alabama's got no shot because it's on the road. I mean, look, obviously, I have a lot of respect for Georgia as a program. To me, I don't consider Athens one of those toughest places to play in college football. I don't think I'd put them in the top 5 in the SEC toughest places to play. But I mean, look, Kirby knows what he's doing. Um, he's had time to establish things for himself at that program. I think there's going to be pressure on Georgia, maybe more so than Alabama, to win this game. I'm going to give it to him for now.
Give it to whom?
I'm going to give it to Georgia.
Okay, you're giving it to Georgia. This is
Yeah.
Alabama's first loss of the year. So this is tough, Matt. I mean, this is probably I think you're right. I think this is probably the first loss of the season, or maybe the only loss of the season. I mean, Alabama handled Georgia in a thriller last year. That was I think I didn't expect Alabama to do what they did. I don't think anybody did. You have to wonder, like, was that a first half anomaly? Like the first half when Alabama goes up, what was it, 28-0 early in that game? Or does Kalen DeBoer see something in Kirby Smart's teams that maybe others don't? I mean, Georgia's stacked in a lot of areas. I mean, they're always going to be solid at on the defensive side of the ball, even though they lost 13 players overall, I think, on the team to the draft. But, they're stacked at receiver, always good at defense. I mean, they lost Carson Beck to Miami. Obviously, we saw a little bit of Gunnar Stockton last year. He's a tough kid, but can he make the throws? Either way, it's going to be a quality win or a quality loss on the resume for both teams, right?
Yeah,
Like this
for
is
sure.
this is one of those games that will look great if you win it, but you can afford to lose it. And if Alabama
Especially
loses
as
this
a
one, not the
road
end of the world.
game, a road game for Alabama, and in this playoff era, and we'll be getting into that, I think, as we get further down the schedule. A loss is far from the end of the world, and especially a road loss to a high quality opponent.
Yeah, and context matters. Like, is it a close game or is it a blowout? We'll see. I doubt if it's a blowout, but Alabama didn't play well on the road last year. All 3 of their games were played that they lost during the regular season. All 4 of their losses last year were played away from Bryant Denny Stadium. They lose to Vandy on the road, to Oklahoma on the road, to Tennessee on the road. So, we'll see if Kalen DeBoer can get them ready. That could have had more to do with the way Jalen Milroe responded on the road. So maybe Ty Simpson is more comfortable under center on the road. So we will see, but I think we're both kind of circling this one or crossing this one off, unfortunately, as a loss on paper. Hate to do it. We're just trying to make predictions here. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. And, we want the opposite thing to happen, of course. All right, next, it doesn't get any easier for Alabama on October 4th. Vanderbilt in Bryant-Denny Stadium, the revenge game. Alabama is zeroing in on Diego Pavia and the Commodores, who beat Alabama in one of the biggest upsets in college football history, not just in 2024. Vanderbilt beating the number one ranked at the time Alabama team in Nashville. And our friend Nick Kelly, he wrote, quote, Diego Pavia and company fooled Alabama once. The Commodores won't fool the Crimson Tide twice, especially at Bryant-Denny Stadium, end quote. I tend to agree with Nick Kelly here, Matt, but we know that Diego Pavia is just a little different.
I mean, I can't say enough how much begrudging respect I have for Diego Pavia. I mean, he is a gamer. I don't think they're ever out of any game when that guy is playing quarterback for that team. But when I look at the circumstances for Vanderbilt this year, yes, I think for one, if anybody is going to be 100% taking them seriously this year, it's Alabama. It was a program traumatizing loss, I think, in a way that nobody involved in the program is going to take for granted or forget about. And I think if you look at how things shape up for Vanderbilt too, um, they will not have had the easiest time coming into this. Now they do have two non-power opponents heading into this game, but no bye week, and they will have had to play Virginia Tech and South Carolina within the first month of the season too, which that's two, I think, very stout opponents and very those will be difficult games for Vanderbilt to win. And in fact, I'd even say I'd be surprised if Vanderbilt is undefeated coming into this game. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest reason is every single person involved in Alabama's program, including all 100,000 people in the stands, will be taking this game very seriously. And eh, respect to Vanderbilt for making that the case. I don't think there's been a time other than back when they had a future NFL quarterback playing for them. I don't know that that's been the case for them.
They better respect Vanderbilt this year, right? I mean, they proved it. Diego Pavia is coming back, and he's going to want to win again, and he's a competitor. So Alabama's got to respect him. I mean, there was more trash talk between Alabama and Vanderbilt than I think I expected or anybody expected last year. I mean, it was a chippy game, and the result obviously bore that out. But there's been trash talk during the offseason too, because Ryan Williams said during an interview recently that we're going to kill an ant with a sledgehammer, talking about Vanderbilt. So you're giving them bulletin board material. Diego Pavia already responded to it on social media. So, don't give them fodder. Don't give them more reasons to believe they can do it. Will they do it in Bryant-Denny Stadium? Will Vanderbilt beat Alabama for a second year in a row? Alabama will be overwhelming favorites, and they should be. And they should win this game just like they should have won in 2024. But it didn't happen because weird things happen. And Diego Pavia, he's on that list of Steven Garcia and at the time, Johnny Manziel, but he obviously turned out to be much better than those guys. I don't mean to equate those two, but Steven Garcia, Zach Calzada, these quarterbacks that just have the games of their lives and just happen to beat Alabama and play like Heisman winners. One of them obviously eventually won it, but Diego Pavia can erase his name from that list of this anomaly that beat Alabama, and he can become a guy that's just an Alabama killer. So we'll see what happens. It's a big revenge game. Nobody could have predicted that we'd be saying that about Vanderbilt coming to Tuscaloosa, but it is what it is, and it's a really fun storyline. I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a cool atmosphere. So Alabama beats Vanderbilt, and they're at this point, what do we say? Are they 4-1? 4-1 at this point, going into Missouri in Columbia, October 11th. 11 a.m. We're being blessed, Matt. A lot of 11 a.m. kicks this year. At least I am, because that's my favorite kickoff time. So our guy, Nick Kelly, he calls this the biggest trap game on the schedule this year. Missouri was in the playoff picture for much of 2024. They lost their starting quarterback. They lost a top receiver and offensive tackle, but they had a big transfer portal class. Alabama dominated Missouri last year. They shut them out. But I think that Eli Drinkwitz is a really good coach. I think they're going to be ready at home this year. They better give a better, or I think Missouri will give a better effort, but I've still got Bama beating Missouri on the road.
I've got Bama winning this one too, Ben. And we're reaching into dangerous gumping territory at this point. But
They
that
shut them
said,
out last year. They
if I
dominated
agree,
them.
it's hard for me. It's hard for me to take Missouri too seriously, despite everything good that you just said about them. But they do have a bye week going into this game, which Alabama doesn't. Um, they'll be pretty well rested. The games they have preceding this are Central Arkansas, Kansas, which is a big rivalry game for Missouri. In case you didn't know that, Kansas is their big rival in football. Uh, Louisiana Lafayette, South Carolina, which again I consider them to be a dangerous team at this point.
Yeah, we'll get
Um,
there.
yeah, and UMass, and then a bye week. So Missouri will have had pretty easy sledding up to this point, uh, and will be well rested for this game. I don't know how good of a thing that is for them. I just have a hard time believing the talent level is going to be there, and Missouri does not have a home field advantage. They're not having to play in Bryant Denny, so that's good for them. But I'm sorry, guys. Columbia does not bring any sort of home field advantage at this point. Y'all have an entire student section that doesn't even have seats in it. It's just a big grass field, like a minor league baseball park with kids rolling down it.
Alabama's had a lot of fun in Columbia the
For
times that
sure.
they've played. Was it 2012 when they had that like monsoon and Eddie Lacy and TJ Yeldon are just running all over
I
them in
mean,
another
what's the
blowout?
most competitive Missouri has been with Alabama since they joined the SEC?
I
Maybe
can't remember
they definitely
actually.
wasn't that SEC championship game that they played, which
No.
I'm sure a lot of us have forgotten even happened. But I believe Derrick Henry broke some records in that game.
Well, in 2014, they played them in the SEC championship, and Blake Sims threw all over them too. So, yeah, it's been pretty one sided so far. They're looking for their first win against Alabama, and they haven't gotten it. Even when they've had some talented teams, and they'll have another talented team this year, I just think Alabama will be better, plain and simple. Okay, Tennessee at home, October 18th, time to be determined. Nico Iamaleava is gone. They don't have quarterback quite figured out yet under Josh Heupel, who has beaten Alabama twice since he's been the coach in Knoxville. They have to replace running back Dylan Simpson, who scored 22 touchdowns last year, so a lot of productivity. They lost a lot of defensive talent to the NFL, but that unit should still be competitive. This is a rivalry game. This is a big revenge game. You never like losing to Tennessee. Alabama was able to rebound last time they lost to them, but Kalen DeBoer needs his first win against Tennessee. I think he gets it this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because I do think Alabama. I mean, this is again we're beat everyone. We're an Alabama podcast. I think on a sort of relatively normal day, Alabama wins that game in Knoxville a year ago. They needed so many things to go wrong for them to lose the game, and they all went wrong. And they had one of those sort of classic disaster games for Jalen Milroe, I think. And um, even a halfway decent game from Milroe, I think wins that game. I think Alabama's in better shape as a program, and I definitely think that's the case after all the offseason tumultuousness for Tennessee. So I'm gonna give Alabama this one too. At this point, Ben, just like taking a step back from it, I think Kalen DeBoer, you're starting to hear people say, okay, maybe he's got it figured out. Maybe last year was a little bit of a, finding their footing. But there's a lot left. There's a lot of meat on the bone still for this schedule.
Well, let's get into the next game because after he beat Georgia the way that he did, everybody thought it was the hire of the century. Alabama is in great shape. There was no drop off from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer after that Georgia game, and then they went to Nashville and lost to Vandy. And so, if they're feeling that way after beating Tennessee, the next game is October 25th, time to be determined. It's South Carolina in Columbia. Matt, this is a bigger trap game to me. Seasoned quarterbacks who played well against Alabama a season ago always scare me. Lenora Sellers, really talented quarterback. They've got a lot of talent. They have edge rusher Dylan Stewart coming back. They want to be in the playoff picture this year, and beating Alabama would be huge in making their case to do that. If there's a loss outside of the usual suspects like Georgia, LSU, Auburn. I think this is it. This is the trap game, in my opinion. What do you think?
I wouldn't call it a trap game. I'm calling it a nightmare game for
True enough.
Alabama.
Okay, fair to South
I
Carolina.
mean, this like you said, this is a team with a ton of talent. They did lose some of that talent on the defensive side, but they've been doing a really good job developmentally with their guys. And look, it's not like that defense that gave Alabama and so many other teams such a hard time a year ago was loaded with high level recruits. A lot of this is development. A lot of this is identifying talent that flies under the radar a bit. And this is what happens when you have some stability in your program and not a hair trigger. I think a lot of schools, maybe that, let's say, think more highly of themselves and their place in the college football hierarchy, would not have let the coaching staff continue on as long as they have. They would have gotten nervous and pulled the trigger on a change. But South Carolina has a little bit more patience there, and they've allowed this thing to develop. And I agree. I think that they could have been a playoff team last year. I think they were extremely dangerous late in the season. Alabama was very fortunate to get away with a win, and playing in this Columbia, I'm not going to hate on the way that I did with Missouri. Columbia, South Carolina is a genuinely tough place to play, and I can't explain it. It's one of those weird things of college football to me. South Carolina has relatively not accomplished very much, not won very much, and they have the fan base of a national championship contender. Those guys are nuts for a big game. Um, I'll go ahead and give Alabama a loss in this game, and I'd be pleasantly surprised to see them win this. I think this would be a big accomplishment if Alabama can go to South Carolina and win this game on the road with the week after playing Tennessee and all of the motivation that South Carolina is going to have for this game. That they're going to be up for this game.
Absolutely. And Alabama barely beat South Carolina last year. And it was another one of those Jalen Milroe games where he played awful football, right? I mean, he did do enough to help them win, which that's what you want. That's the name of the game. And he did that, but he made so many bad decisions throughout the course of it. And it made that game way more competitive than it probably should have been. And I think there was a pretty significant talent disparity between the two teams last year. And that's ultimately what put Alabama over the edge. But there's blood in the water now, and they know that they can compete and they can beat Alabama. And this is the one that this is one of those games, Matt, where you can kind of like envision the field rush, like already ahead of time, where like you can kind of see it from a mile away. Like you can just like see it happening. But
I can tell you that
I'm not trying to manifest it or anything, but like I've seen enough
they play
of them at this
Oklahoma
point.
the week before, which in most years would be a huge game. I honestly think that game is more dangerous for South Carolina than Alabama, because
That's a trap game.
I think
That's a
they're
trap
going to
game.
be looking past Oklahoma at the Alabama game.
Do you think, Matt, that Alabama is worth a field rush right now? Like they're
Yeah.
Alabama, the brand is Alabama, and they're obviously going to be favored to win like most of, if not all of their games this year. But I mean, obviously, when Nick Saban was coaching, the losses were few and far between, especially against overwhelming underdogs in the SEC, even. And so if they beat Alabama, especially at the last second, like so many of them did, that warrants a field rush. It makes sense. But do you think in DeBoer's second year, Alabama, not rebuilding, that's the wrong word, but just sort of like retooling and finding their identity under their new coach, do you think that if you win a close game against Alabama, that it's going to warrant one the same way that it did during the Saban era?
Until you expect to beat Alabama, until your fan base expects to beat Alabama, it's a big deal, and they're going to rush the field for it. And it's going to take a lot more than one 9-win season for Alabama to bring things to that place. They are still a standard bearer for the sport, and it's a huge deal, and it gets you a lot of national attention to beat Alabama. And that's the biggest reason why people will make it a big deal when they beat Alabama, is because they know if they do it, everybody's going to hear about it and pay attention to it.
It's a huge compliment. Do it. It's a
For
huge
sure.
compliment to Alabama for you to do that, and it's gonna, like, run them, however many thousands of dollars. I'm sure it's worth it, right, for them
I think
to.
it's $250,000, by the way.
I mean, that's a okay. Have fun, have
Yeah.
fun. I'm sure the administration is going to be thrilled about that. Okay, next game, LSU at home, Bryant Denny Stadium, night game, November 8th. Matt, under the lights in Bryant Denny Stadium. This is a huge year for Brian Kelly. They beat Alabama his first year. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman his second, but Alabama has caught them the last couple of seasons because they had no answer for Jalen Milroe specifically. This is where the guy shined. Alabama's obviously going to throw a much different look at them this year. And Garrett Nussmeier is one of the best returning starting quarterbacks in the country. Also consider that they had one of the best transfer portal hauls this offseason, and they have a loaded defense. This is going to be a really tough one, but it's at home. It's at night. The atmosphere is going to be insane. I've got Alabama against LSU this year.
I've got Alabama in this game too. I think that this is always one that this program gets up for. I think it's deeply buried in the DNA of the program to be excited for an LSU game, and I think it's at home for Alabama. I think that the atmosphere becomes a real player in this game, particularly in this rivalry. Um, that there's never a down year for the Alabama LSU rivalry in the stands. There might be one on the field, but people go nuts for this game. And look, I think right now one thing that we haven't really talked about in this discussion is Alabama's offensive coaching staff and the addition of Ryan Grubb to the staff. This is the point in the season where you should know what your identity is, and I think a lot of times, particularly let's talk about the 2 years with Jalen Milroe at quarterback playing against LSU. Both of those years, you could argue that Alabama went into those games. I mean, there was no secret that Jalen Milroe was great on his legs, but those are 2 games that LSU seemed utterly shocked at Alabama's offensive game plan going into those 2 games. They were entirely unprepared to deal with the thing that Alabama was best at offensively. And I think that Alabama may not have an athlete as dynamic as Jalen Milroe anywhere on the offense this year, but I think overall the talent level of the offense is probably going to be a step up this year. And by this point in the season, their offensive identity should be really clear, and they're going to have an offensive coaching staff that should hopefully understand what that is and what they're good at. And I think part of what I'm dancing around here too is I think for the most part, this LSU coaching staff does not seem to prepare well for Alabama for some reason. I don't know why, but they haven't done a great job the last 2 years, and so I think I'm more in the space of I need to see LSU prove that they can win a big game against Alabama with
The
Brian Kelly and his staff.
the one coaching staff seemingly that doesn't prepare well for Alabama, if that's the case. So
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, last year was a disaster for them. So we both got LSU in 20. We've got a win for Alabama against LSU in 2025. Okay, we get to another revenge game, Matt. Oklahoma at home, Bryant Denny Stadium, November 15th, kickoff time to be determined. So Oklahoma lost the quarterback who actually beat Alabama. Jackson Arnold is gone, but they signed one of the top quarterback transfers in the country in John Mateer from Washington State, where they also picked up their new offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. And their offense really struggled to put up points all year last year, Matt, but they were able to do it against Alabama well enough. And, they've made some big improvements, but so has Alabama. I think they get revenge at home this year. I'm giving Alabama the win here.
I'm with you, Ben. I think this is one of that will forever be one of the most inexplicable Alabama football performances I've ever seen. Totally out of character, even for the team within the season. Hard to explain how everything went so wrong for them in that game. But I just don't. I think Oklahoma has a long way to go as a program. I think that they're still very much building. I know you can change things a lot in the transfer era. and you can make a lot of progress very quickly. But I think this is a program that was not particularly well suited to be joining the SEC when they did, in terms of their talent level, and the roster makeup. And I look, I will credit their defensive coaching staff last year had an incredible plan ready to shut down Alabama, and they should be taken seriously. But I think, boy, it's just hard for me to look at Oklahoma in the last couple of years and feel like they're in a great spot as a program. Maybe I'll feel differently by November, but um, you know, I think they're a little bit off pace right now.
All right, a win against Oklahoma. Matt, Eastern Illinois at home, November 22nd. Kickoff is 1 p.m. This is the only FCS team on Alabama's schedule in 2025. I think we can make quick work of this one.
Yeah. Not I mean, honestly, Eastern Illinois, one of the few programs, Ben, that I don't think I could tell you what their what their mascot is. I know Southern Illinois and I know Northern Illinois, but I don't know Eastern Illinois. Do you know off the top of your head what their
No, of
mascot is?
course not. Absolutely not. Like the Fighting John Hugheses. I don't know. The what are they? The
They're the Panthers,
okay.
and they have Carolina Panthers colors essentially.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. And they're in Charleston, Illinois. Never been there.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, that too. That too. So look, I mean, it's a game and it's reps, and if maybe they can make it competitive, who knows? But if not, then maybe this is a game where there are opportunities for younger players to get on the field and get some good experience. But not dismissing Eastern Illinois completely. They got to win the game. But we're gonna mark a W for Bama here, I think. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Final game of the season, Matt. As always, Auburn in Auburn, November 29th. Kickoff time to be determined. I'll go first here. I mean, this is way more of a make or break for Hugh Freeze than it is Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer won his first Iron Bowl. If Alabama loses the Iron Bowl, the fans won't be happy. But Hugh Freeze has to win this game, I think, to stick around. They have a quarterback who beat Alabama a year ago. I mentioned that, Jackson Arnold. But Zach Calzada beat Alabama too. Transferred to Auburn, didn't really do much. So we'll see how Arnold fits into Hugh Freeze's system and if that translates to more success against Kane Womack and his defense. Alabama didn't even have to play very well in Tuscaloosa last year, and they won by 2 touchdowns. So we all know that weird stuff happens in Jordan-Hare Stadium. But right now, Matt, I'm penciling this one for Alabama.
Ben, I want to break from you on this. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to, but I'm gonna have to say until there's 0 seconds left on the clock, I'm predicting this to be a loss for Alabama. And and look, 5 years in a row is incredibly impressive for Alabama. I know there's a lot of most of you watching this are Alabama fans. And so, of course, you have no respect for Auburn, and why
or
should
you now that you're picking Auburn?
But it actually is a huge deal that Alabama just won 5 Iron Bowls in a row, which included 2 Iron Bowls on the road. And the reason it's a huge deal is because that's not happened since the Bryant era. That Alabama has won that many in a row. I think, unfortunately, that's too much of a sample size to say that is a coincidence. I think that Auburn fans, just like I mentioned, right? Alabama gets up for LSU. Auburn fans get up for this game in a way that I don't think any fan base gets up for any game, in any sport. I have been on the ground in Jordan-Hare Stadium for enough Iron Bowls to know that place is a portal to hell when Alabama is playing in there. And the atmosphere does affect Alabama. You can go back. I mean, the best examples to point to were actually, I think, 2013 felt that way to me, but 2021 and 23, which are both games that Alabama won in the end, Alabama should have won those games by a huge margin. Alabama was the far superior team in those two games, and they had to barely eke out wins because that place has evil juju in it when Alabama is playing there. I I think I agree with you. Auburn desperately needs this game. Hugh Freeze desperately needs this game. I think they're going to throw everything they've got at Alabama, and it's going to take everything Alabama's got to win this game. And if they win it, Kalen DeBoer deserves a ton of credit, and I think he deserves a lot of loyalty and confidence from the Alabama fan base. I'm just not going to believe that it's going to happen until it happens, because they've narrowly avoided losing to far inferior Auburn teams the last two trips down there. I just don't see them continuing to escape danger that way a third time in a row.
Are you done?
I'm done, Ben.
Okay, good. I mean, are you lying back on a couch right now and like is this a therapy session here? I mean,
I don't know how you
golly.
look. If
So
you're an Alabama fan and you're not traumatized by Iron Bowls at Auburn, then I want some of what you're taking.
I just think, yes, the kick six, and there have been weird things that have happened there. I think that they sort of like eradicated all that over the last several years, and the 5-game streak is great. But like the fact that, again, and we don't have to go into the weeds here, but the fact that after the kick six, Auburn didn't get it done in the national championship game, that kind of like took some of the pain away. And then Alabama goes on and they win on a last second play. Auburn's not involved, obviously, but it's a walk-off win. But that's for a national championship, and it's an even bigger play than the kick six when you talk about like the stakes that were involved. So I don't know. Like, to me, it's at this point kind of a distant memory. But
Look,
that
everything
being
you're
said,
saying is reasonable, Ben. And like, look, they should be beaten down after 5 in a row. They're not. I promise you, when it comes to kickoff of that game this year, I don't even if Auburn is already not eligible for a bowl, that place is going to be insane when the game starts. And you have to take the crowd out of it as fast as possible. And the last two times down there, Alabama didn't take the crowd out of it. They stayed in it for the entire game, and it made it hell on earth for Alabama in those games.
I think above the Jordan and Pat Dye and Cliff Hare statues outside of the stadium, they need to make like a bronze thing with your quote, "a portal to hell," as you put it earlier. I think if you don't want to overstate things, a portal to hell inside Journey. You're right, man. You're absolutely right. But that being said, all of those things considered, I think Alabama's got a better team, and I think that
No
they
question.
beat Auburn.
No question.
I think, and you're right. Like, they've had better teams and they've lost to Auburn. It's happened before because of where they were. But I don't know. I think Alabama's better, and I think they're going to show that they're better and they're going to win. But that being said, more is on the line for Auburn and more is on the line for Hugh Freeze. Like I said, if he wants to stick around as the coach, like, he got to win the Iron Bowl. That's the most important thing over there.
Cannot. I mean, look, that's what did Mike Shula in ultimately was. I mean, he was making progress. He was doing good things, but he couldn't win an Iron Bowl, and they got rid of him. And I think Hugh Freeze will face the same dilemma. I think no matter how much progress it looks like they're making this season, short of a playoff berth, I think he's got to win the Iron Bowl to keep his job.
Well, so we're not talking postseason here. So we're only talking regular season. We can't predict what will happen in the SEC championship, for instance. So I think I've got Alabama here 10-2 on the regular season. And Matt, am I mistaken, or do you have them 9-3?
I have them 9-3. I think it might be good enough for them to make the playoffs, but I would say that Iron Bowl loss coming as late as it comes, we all know things count more late in the season. And I think it could do a lot of damage. It could be the difference for Alabama making the playoffs or not.
All right. Well, those are our picks. We picked the regular season. We want to hear what you think. Tell us what we got wrong in the comments, and we'll have a little conversation in there. But that's going to do it for this episode. Coming up on Thursday, we're going to look back. We've got our 15-game countdown, the 15 best games of the 21st century for Alabama football. We're going to be talking about an SEC championship game, one that was one for the books. Obviously, it's in our top 10 picks for this series. You're not going to want to miss it. But until the next time, Matt, thanks again for doing this. We will see if we're right or we're wrong. We'll eat crow if and when we'd love to be wrong about the losses that we predicted.
I hope everyone's telling me how wrong I was at the end of the season.
All right, Matt, thanks for doing this. You can find Beat Everyone wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Please go download, go subscribe, write us a review. That would be so kind of you to do that. We appreciate it. And I've been Flanagan with AL.com. And until next time, we will see you down the road. Thank you.